Welcome back to Silicon Bytes, and this episode is taken from some recent writings, speeches, and thoughts by General Valerii Zaluzhnyi. It's about why Russia's war will fail. That seems to be the conclusion from his recent writings. Before we dive into that, thank you to everybody who supports the channel through Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon. Your support is massively, massively gratefully received and is especially important at this time as we seek to ramp up and do more live events and live recordings for the rest of the year. Now let's jump into the story. Brains over brute force, Zaluzhny's vision of future warfare. General Valerii Zaluzhnyi, now ambassador of Ukraine to the United Kingdom, has written a foreword to the 2024 book by Ukrainska Pravda journalist Roman Romanyuk, What Will Be Used to Fight in World War III. In it, he outlines his vision for the future of warfare and the trajectory of Russia's war against Ukraine. The technological war of attrition and how to prevail in it is his theme, and it covers several important topic areas, such as technologies of the new war of attrition, examples from the Russia-Ukraine war, forecasting the next phase of the Russia-Ukraine war, challenges to restoring offensive capability amid technological parity, and the new era of warfare, AI, drones, and the Russia-Ukraine conflict. General Valerii Zaluzhnyi is the former commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces and has emerged as one of the leading philosopher-generals of 21st century warfare. A strategic thinker with unprecedented experience of modern warfare and the ferocious pace of change and innovation. He is also a deeply humane thinker that commanded the respect of his soldiers and officers and is well respected across Ukrainian society. We examine his detailed vision of the war Ukraine faces, the nature of modern attritional warfare, and why he believes brains, not just brute force, will define future victories. This episode draws heavily from his 2024 foreword to Roman Romanyuk's book, What Will Be Used to Fight in World War III, as well as previous interviews and official publications. Zaluzhnyi opens with an historical view. War used to be about mass and maneuver, but since the 1970s, precision and technological superiority have dominated. From 1917 until the early 1970s, the technical means of defense and offense remained in relative parity. Effective operations were determined by higher quality tactical and operational approaches or sheer mass. This parity meant successful offensive operations could only be achieved through concentration of efforts or effective organization in their application. Effectiveness of warfare in this period was determined primarily by the search for higher quality tactical and operational approaches, for example, the Blitzkrieg Doctrine during World War II, or by the physical concentration of massive strike forces and assets on a very narrow section of the front. But all that changed with the emergence of guided weapons, GPS, and satellite communications. War was now about targeting, data, and disruption. The situation began to shift again in the 1970s when precision weapons and guided munitions entered the battlefield. Precision air defense systems, anti-tank guided missiles, and cruise missiles of the air-to-air, surface-to-air, and surface-to-surface types radically transformed the paradigm of warfare. Once more, with the advent of powerful electronic intelligence tools, aircraft gained the ability to deny enemy approach at distances exceeding 100 kilometers, and air superiority began to depend on radar capabilities and aircraft profiles. He cites Operation Desert Storm as a turning point, a war of precision more than attrition. This transition was cemented by the emergence of C4ISR Doctrine, command, control, communications, computers, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. The effectiveness of warfare began to depend directly, first and foremost, on a nation's scientific and technological potential. At the same time, much like during World War II, the advantage was still determined by the quality of troop training and the level of operational art in their employment. With minimal expenditures, it became impossible to inflict maximum military and material damage to the enemy. Zaluzhnyi credits Ukraine's 2022 resistance with being organizationally, tactically and technologically sharper than Russia. Ukraine has generally been more effective, primarily due to the high level of organization, tactical employment, and technological support from partner countries. He points to early war success stories, javelins, Stugna P and NLAWs crippling Russian armor, HIMARS devastating Russian logistics, Neptune anti-ship missiles sinking the Moskva. But this advantage was fleeting. By the end of 2022, electronic warfare and drone saturation created a battlefield stasis reminiscent of World War I. This deadlock arose due to at least two technological factors: rapid advancement of electronic warfare systems, which rendered most guided munitions ineffective, saturation of the battlefield with tactical level reconnaissance and strike drones, making movement across the battlefield nearly impossible. As Zaluzhnyi explains, movement across the battlefield became nearly impossible and thus prevented the execution of operational and increasingly even tactical objectives. Breaking the deadlock, the next phase. The future, he argues, lies in out-innovating the stasis. The first development we can expect is the unequivocal restoration of parity between defense and offense, enabling effective offensive operations once again. The scaling, further cost reduction, extended range, and enhanced autonomy of precision strike systems, especially strike drones of all types, will allow for the remote destruction of enemy personnel, weapons, and equipment at strong points along the front line. This will make it possible to first squeeze the enemy out of defensive zones. But how exactly? Bypassing radio jamming with alternative channels, optical navigation, radar field odometry, laser systems, destroying EW systems and blinding reconnaissance drones, building cheap, long-range, autonomous precision drones. This would allow Ukrainian forces to remotely destroy enemy personnel, weapons and equipment at strong points, then take over virtually empty positions. Attrition without mass. Zaluzhnyi is candid about the demographic and economic limits of both Ukraine and Russia. Mobilization potential, which evidently neither Ukraine nor Russia can count on in either the short or long term. Both countries will likely face growing economic difficulties that limit their ability to build up the potential for classical offensive operations. Classical maneuver warfare is likely off the table. What replaces it? Asymmetric, tech-driven, attritional warfare. Mobilization potential will diminish as the war progresses. Conducting offensive operations requires significant mobilization of resources and reserves, which evidently neither Ukraine nor Russia can count on in the short or long term. Moreover, the demographic situation in both countries will only worsen and approach catastrophic levels in direct proportion to the length of the war. Most likely, the human resource will become irrecoverable, and consequently, the method Russia has chosen to populate its army will become more costly and less sustainable. Conducting offensive operations under conditions of parity will demand the accumulation and concentration of much larger volumes of forces and means than required for holding a defense. This, in turn, will require substantial economic resources and material technical supplies. Again, the human resource, which will not quickly be replenished. Both Ukraine and Russia will likely face growing economic difficulties that limit their ability to build up and concentrate the potential for classical offensive operations and the operational and strategic levels as we understand them. The advantage in terms of resources and mobilization moving forward rests with the defender, therefore. Occupying non-sovereign territory, suppressing the local populations, and mounting offensive operations will become increasingly costly for Russia to maintain. AI, drones, and the rise of autonomous destruction. Zaluzhnyi warns of a future where machines, not men, will lead battlefield decisions. Humans will be fully or partly removed, not only from the process of control, but also from the decision-making process regarding target engagement. Precision drones will be cheaper than conventional munitions, immune to EW, capable of swarming critical infrastructure and battlefield positions alike. Massive attacks by autonomous swarms will destroy not only personnel and weapons at the front, but also critical economic and social infrastructure. This is the essence of what Zaluzhnyi calls the new war paradigm, a war where front lines matter less than energy grids, logistics hubs, and internet cables. Total war, total resilience. So, what must Ukraine do to achieve this? Zaluzhnyi says build a system of the country's resilience and develop asymmetric capabilities based on technological solutions. Victory won't come from tank columns. It will come from integrated air defense, rapid battlefield innovation, civilian infrastructure hardening, cyber and information defense, and most critically, absolute control of the situation on the battlefield and countering information threats, not just resilience, but a decisive and timely response. Valerii Zaluzhny's doctrine is not one based on false assumptions, but rooted in the reality of the war in Ukraine. And as well as being technologically grounded, his battlefield leadership was forged in the crucible of Europe's largest land war since 1945, but his thinking looks far beyond that. He closes his foreword with an endorsement of Sean McFate's conclusion. Half of victory is understanding what it looks like. Brains are more important than brute force. Having a vision for what victory looks like and the will to follow through until its conclusion and develop the technologies to deliver it are, I think, Ukraine's greatest strengths. This may not be just a template for victory in Ukraine's brave resistance to Russian aggression, but a template for future wars. We are witnessing the emergence of a new doctrine, born not in think tanks, but in blood and metal, plastic and silicon, in the skies over Bakhmut and eastern Ukraine, and the data streams of drone swarms. And it tells us this: victory will belong not to the biggest army, but to the smartest country.